Hi guys, welcome back. Today, figuring out my connection issues. Working from home is a new thing for all. Hopefully that works. So today's very exciting because we're talking to someone very special to me. And this week we read Verified Strangers, which was a book, a novel that Lena Dunham is writing for Vogue, and it's super cool because this is kind of like a new take on writing a romance novel where she was basically doing a chapter a day, and at the end of each chapter she was allowing readers to vote on kind of what would happen in the next chapter, which I think is a really, really cool idea and really awesome. And I don't know if you guys voted. I was voting personally, and I could go on about this book forever, but we have Lena who is going to talk to us, so who better to talk to than Lena herself? And I think, like, it's just a very modern take on reading. I thought it was so cool that she had this idea. And they were just, like, short little chapters. You're following the life of this girl, Allie, mid-30s, who's kind of going through dating, and it just was super real, and it was like a good way for me to start the day this week. Like, I would wake up and it's kind of part of my routine, and I've been trying to make a routine for myself, so, you know, I don't go stir crazy in quarantine, as I'm sure we're all feeling a bit of right now. And I want to see if we can bring Lena on here because she is who better talk to. Lena, I see that you're watching it. You have to request to be on here. I think we're all trying to figure out how to use technology. I think I'm getting better. I think being inside has forced me to get better at using my computer and my phone. And reading, oh, we flipped it. Reading things online is also new for me. I'm very used to going to the bookstore, and, you know, that's not something we can do right now. I see you, Lena. Okay, bring her on. I'm so excited for this. I could talk to Lena for like 4 hours. We have you!
I've never worked harder at anything.
I realize now that maybe I'm not the generation of technology.
Well,
I think the kids
you
have
are,
it.
because I was sitting here and I was like, I don't even know how to type a comment. How am I ever going to get on to? I was like listening to you talk, being like, this brilliant girl, and I'll never get to speak to her again.
I just never talk to you again.
Also,
Like,
I have to say that, like, looking at the difference in our lighting, our ability to compose a frame, I'm shocked.
I need to tell you, I bought a tripod. I never
you
thought
did
I would.
not.
I did. Because last week my setup was so janky, you can ask anyone, and my phone kept like slipping down and falling. I had it like resting on a school award that I had won once.
A school award.
Yeah.
Well, that's going to be me this week. I set up a little Instagram live station with my books and my juices and weirdly my lotion.
I have my books next to me too.
That's what I thought. I was like, what do you bring on? What you're currently reading, gifts you may have brought for Kaia, just, you know, general things.
Oh my god, I'm so excited. Thanks for coming on here.
It's such an honor. I'm so, like, I don't know, you're my favorite reader.
You're my favorite reader and favorite writer.
Like, I remember you'd be too, that means so much, and Roland Barthes is your favorite writer, so, which is why I told you that I was going to bring you a present, and it's on its way to you. But I want you to say on this Instagram live, because you've been famously pictured carrying Lover's Discourse, I did for you what I always used to do to try to impress boys who had a crush on me, which is I got you a first edition. Because in every book lover's cabinet, there has to be a first edition of their favorite book.
I don't have a first edition of anything.
It's really fun. And I was told,
there's a tear in my eye.
Yay, and it's coming to your house. And that's an old book. So it's an old book, but I got it off a French website. So let's see if it does what it's supposed to. But I was told when I was like 25, I was like, I don't know what you get boys, like boyfriends for. And they were like, well, if they like to read, get them a first edition. So I don't have a boyfriend, but I'm getting one for you.
I'll be your book boyfriend anytime.
I'm so lucky to be your book girlfriend.
That is, I'm gonna cry.
You're so sweet. Because I love that, not to dive right into it, because I know we're supposed to like talk sassily about our lives, but I always love when someone who's in a position to make reading seem cool does. Like, I remember back in the day when Britney Spears used to get pictured reading by the pool. And even though it wasn't Lover's Discourse, I was just always like, you know what, Britney? Good on you. And you're not Britney Spears and you're not by a pool, but I just love that, like, when you're doing a street style photo, there's a book in your hand so that people are like, oh, that's a thing I can do with my time.
Yeah, and I think it's funny because I do think there's that whole stigma around like, I'm just carrying a book, oops. And and when I started reading, I truly, it was funny to me, people's reactions. Like, I'd walk into a show with a book and people would be like, are you reading? And I was like, yeah, what are you doing?
That's
like,
what
if
I'm
you have
doing.
so much free time. But I used to give my mom so much shit for having a Kindle because I would be lugging around like 10 books in my suitcase for Fashion Week, like so heavy. And just because I liked having real books.
Me too.
And here I am.
I used to travel with an extra suitcase for like reading material.
Yeah. Here I am a year later, and I do have a Kindle. And girl, I will say, when I can get the actual book, I do. But like in times like this, girl.
I just got it 2 weeks ago. If I can't get out to, say, an independent bookstore and, you know, do the damn thing, then I want to, like, I have right now 30 books in here. And my favorite outdoor activity is, what's your favorite bookstore in LA?
Okay, I'm so bad in LA. I have no idea. Because I grew up in Malibu. There was like...
So you've like the bookstore in the Brentwood Farmers Market.
Yeah.
I don't know. I've only been to Malibu once. Like, I mean, twice. Like, I don't know. But I know in LA, I always go to books. Shout out to Book Soup.
Is that... Oh, I've heard that's a good one.
It's so good. It's on Sunset. And
okay.
And they have everything. And so not being... And here in London, there's a bookstore called Persephone Books that's all women-written books in these beautiful vintage editions. And it makes me cry. And what's the one you go to in New York?
Okay, so that's actually why I started like actually reading. Was I moved to New York and I just graduated high school, and in school I didn't really like to read because it was stuff that they were forcing us to read. And so I
just never a huge reader.
Yeah, and so I moved to New York when I was 17, and I was like, I need to make friends here. What kind of people do I want to hang out with? And I lived around the corner from McNally Jackson, so I just started going there to make friends, truly. And
by the way,
it was the best.
Cooler than the staff at McNally Jackson, which now it's closing or closed.
Don't tell me that.
I believe I mean, I don't want someone saying, is anyone who's watching know the fate of McNally Jackson? Because someone can let us know in the comments.
Am I about to find out some really tragic news on Instagram Live?
Well, it's confusing. Someone just wrote, read the Bible. McNally Jackson is an incredible New York bookstore that is
we have a little cafe. And there was this wonderful woman who worked there, and I would go in and I'd be like, I made her my professor because I didn't go to college. So I made her my honorary college professor, and I'd just be like, tell me what I need to read. Because I, at that point, had really not read much at all. And she gave me all the classics. Oh, it's the best.
So, the thing that's amazing about McNally Jackson is like they have art books, they have fiction, they have kids. Like, there's no section that they're not. No. Temporarily closed. Someone just let us know. It's perfect. And I don't know how a bookstore can be full of so many attractive employees. Like, it breaks every stereotype about people who read. So
I know. That was when I felt my coolest. I'd like wake up in the morning, get all ready, and I'd go to McNally Jackson and hang out there for hours.
And what was the first book you read where you thought to yourself, oh, because I grew up as a reader because I didn't love reading what they gave me in school, but because I wasn't a child with an enormous amount of friends, books, it's so cheesy to say, but books truly became like my friendship circle. My dad used to have to walk with his hand on my back because I refused to take a walk I would walk down the street reading a book. And so...
And just straight into a pool.
literally, like the amount of book-related injuries. But I wondered what the first book was where you thought, oh, maybe I actually am a reader.
I mean, for me growing up, there was like a few that I did Dear God, It's Me, Margaret, where I felt really seen.
Perfect. I felt
which was
so
great.
seen, and I was like 8, and I was waiting for my period from that day forth.
Same, and I was doing this exercise, trying to get my boobs bigger.
We must increase our bust.
So I loved those, and then I think I took kind of a break when I started working, and I was still doing school online, and then this is such a weird first book, but I went straight from like not reading for years to reading The Stranger.
That is wild, because Camus is like a serious choice.
And it was a super, I mean, I loved it because it's not a really daunting book to read. It's super short, very straight to the point, the way that he writes. And I loved it. And I did that and A Season in Hell were the first two. When I moved to New York, being like, I'm gonna be a reader now.
That's so much, like the first book, I remember the first like big kids book I read that had chapters, and it was called There's a Boy in the Girls' Bathroom. And it was just about a nerdy boy who liked to hang out in the girls' bathroom, I believe. Hi, Jen. And it was such a ridiculous, but I remember being so proud. But like to start off with The Stranger is
wild choice.
Level. Like I was a creative writing major in college, and so we had to read an enormous amount. It was really like an English major with extra writing at Oberlin College, and I took a translation class, and I remember a boy was like, I've decided I'm going to translate The Stranger from the original French, and the teacher was like, I don't think you should start there.
No, which is it's hard to find when you're reading like a translated book. It is hard to find one that is super true to the original version, especially
and
French.
The right one. And I've realized like one of my favorite books is Madame Bovary, and there's dozens, if not hundreds, of translations. And the one that I love is the Lydia Davis translation, not because it's like perfectly faithful to the French, but because Lydia Davis is an amazing fiction writer, so she just uses her instincts and translates. So, but okay, so you started with The Stranger, and then was it really like McNally Jackson that was educating you?
It truly was. And then I went into Just Kids, because I was like, I'm living in New York. This is like, and so I tried to hit all of the places. What you gotta
do. My dad was photographed by Robert Mapplethorpe once. It's my only, it's like, I'm so sad I wasn't born yet. And so, yeah, Just Kids.
And that book was good because it was so different from like A Season in Hell when you're reading like Rimbaud and Camus, and then you go to like this really beautifully but super real written book by Patty, who's incredible. So
yeah,
then I went straight to that. But
that's amazing.
I think it's like, that's what I love about reading, is that you don't have to stick to one subject. Like I have read books on, I love philosophy, I love fiction, I love like a good romance novel. Like I do not ever, and you can read multiple at once. And that's what I had to teach myself to do also, is being able to like read 2 books at once and kind of balance.
Well, it's like you don't want to spend all your time with one friend. Like that's how I think about it. Like even just looking at my bookshelf right now, like just next to my bed I have the Elaine Stritch biography, which is just like a brilliant funny biography of a genius comedian who never wears pants, so she inspires me. I have a novel by my friend Emma Gannon that's like a really sweet kind of like coming into yourself novel, and then I have this really 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 challenging memoir by Margot Fregoso, and it's like, for me, I have to be able to switch between those things, or I feel like I'm being robbed of something important.
No, exactly. You have to, I think but it's like if you're going to school, you're taking, 6 subjects.
Multiple classes.
But wait,
and I'm so not, like, whenever people say they're reading a guilty pleasure, or I kind of think there are no trashy books.
No
like,
such
that's
thing.
One of the reasons I wanted to try writing romance novels, because I was like, it can't be a fake genre if it's what women historically, like, a lot of women historically have loved to read. Like, it's important. So let's see.
It's so important. My mom was always like, it was so funny because I would always make fun of her for every conversation we had. She'd start with, well, in the book I'm reading, and I was like, here we go. And
oh my God.
Now I'm that person. I'm so that person.
And
in the book I just read.
The books you should, and so speaking of read, like, what's your reading style? Like, my dad used to make fun of me because my favorite way to read is on the couch with my neck scrunched up like this,
Yes.
completely like unable to move. And I like to read in a pile in my sweat clothes, surrounded by snacks until I like my dream is a day that's clear to read from morning to night. Like,
Yeah.
but some people go, I get my best reading done on the subway. Like, what's that for you?
I've had to learn how to read like backstage at shows, which it's not quiet. And I think that it's been awesome to be able to learn that skill because then I can kind of quiet everything out when you're reading and just focus on that. It's like a very calming moment for me. But ideally, I'm the same, like in sweatpants. I'm on the couch. I have like one leg hanging off the couch, one leg straight off. I will not move for hours. And I remember the first time I read a full chapter book, I was probably like 9 or 10. And
Huge moment.
It was massive. And we had just gotten a delivery and there was a big cardboard box. And I went outside in our front yard and we had a light in the grass. And I cut a hole in the box, put it over the light, and I sat in the cardboard box for like 3 hours while I finished this book.
That's the most ingenious thing I've ever heard. It's
and
like,
I still think I'm the same person, and I would do that now.
Yeah, you have to. I think that every adult in the world, if we were living in a perfect world, every adult would have a tree house, and they'd be able to read in their tree house. And sometimes, if I want to relax, I will Google treehouse and just look at tree houses all over the world and imagine reading in them.
Have you seen that show where they just build the most amazing tree houses?
Yes. Any show where they're building like I love Tiny House Nation. I love Treehouse, but it's all because there's a new show on Netflix called Stay Here where they'll like remake like a houseboat into an Airbnb or like a weird garage. And like, it's really because I just want to be reading in every one of those rooms.
Yeah. Like I just try to make the most ideal, cozy reading places in every single place that I stay in.
So what inspired you? Everyone's sort of doing their part, not just for, not just like during quarantine, they're doing their part to help others, but they're also doing their part to keep people entertained. What made you go, I gotta have a book club?
I've always wanted a book club and always wanted to be included in a book club. No one has ever asked me to be in their book club. And I had that realization and I was like, you know what? If no one's going to ask me, I'm going to start my own. And I'm not going to exclude anyone. So that's why I was like, I might as well just do it for everyone who wants to join and inspire people to read. Because I think there's only I feel like I've already finished everything on Netflix. There's only so much you can watch. And I just need the reading time to feel like I'm, feeding my brain a little bit during this.
Completely. And it's good to, there's so many times where I finish a book and I look around and I'm like, it's like this Taffy Brodesser-Akner book I read. I finished Fleischman is in Trouble and I looked around and I was like, as if I had 8 friends there who were going to debate it with me. And we can say, moms can say everything that they want about what's negative about the internet, but what makes it beautiful is you can find the people you can connect with on a cultural level. And a book club, for a while on Twitter, I started a novella book club because I was like, what if we all read books that are under 100 pages? We'll all read them. Cool. But Twitter's a little bit unruly for a book club. Like, I feel like Instagram is the medium. So I wouldn't say...
Instagram's a bit more tame than Twitter, I would say.
I wouldn't say it was the most successful book club, but I did love, we read my friend Darcy Wilder's book, literally Show Me a Normal Person, and it's so beautiful. And we read a sci-fi novel. I tried to just mix it up because under 100. But your book club, I feel like it's also perfect because Normal People's an amazing book to start with, which is lots of people have read it and lots more people need to. And
and it's such an easy read once you get through. Once you get into it, I finished it in 2 days the first time I ever read it. I love that book so much, so I thought and they have the Hulu show coming out, which is so
I know good. The trailer looks amazing. I know I read Conversations with Friends first, and I remember I was shooting a movie in this. It was kind of the perfect reading situation. I was shooting a movie in Massachusetts, no cell phone reception. We were shooting nights, so I had all day. I was sleeping in the attic of a farmhouse with floral wallpaper and mismatched floral sheets.
Wow.
And I had the book and I was like, I feel like if someone took a picture of me right now, I would be the Instagram book girl. But instead I'm just alone reading this perfect volume.
I know. That's what frustrates me is oftentimes my mom falls victim to having to read what books I'm reading because she is such a big reader too. So
Yep.
then I need someone to, like, I'm the person that if I finish a book, I need to talk about it with someone. And usually my friends are sitting there like, I really don't care. I haven't read it. I'm not interested. But I made my mom, did you read A Little Life?
So beautiful. Hanya actually edited me. I wrote a cover piece for T magazine and she edited me.
Oh.
And I was late. Sorry, Hanya. I really want you to know that I'd love to write for you again. And I kept thinking like her notes on my piece were better than anything I'd ever written in my piece. Like I was like,
let's
why
just
don't
publish the notes?
That's exactly what I felt. I was like, your criticisms of my work would make a greater cover story. And it was so cool because it was a cover story about this book, The Outsiders, which if you haven't read it, there's a movie based on it, but it's this children's author, S.E. Hinton, and it's where the amazing phrase "stay gold, pony boy" comes from, which was like a very like classic 80s like
Pony boy.
Pony boy.
My dad made a lot of Pony Boy references growing up, so that's probably makes sense.
He's probably, well, it's all like that movie's like, you know, Rob Lowe and Tom Cruise and Emilio Estevez. Like it's like peak Brat Pack, boys in leather jackets, a dream. And so the best. And so I wrote it, and A Little Life, Hanya had such amazing notes. My mind was blown. So you made your mom read it.
I did, and then we both mourned together for like 2 weeks. We were just
too sad,
walking around the house like in this state of like crisis and mourning and sadness, and but I was so happy that she was in the same place as me. And then everyone I recommended it to, they loved it, and then they're also like, oh my gosh, what do I do?
Well, what's so amazing is that like the grief you can have about a character in a book. Like I remember when I was obsessed with these books.
Tommy.
I was obsessed with these books when I was in middle school. I'm sorry, I'm already laughing. They were called the One Last Wish series, and they were about kids who went to a camp for kids with terminal illnesses. So you were always reading it knowing like it was like two kids who like wanted to finally have their first kiss before they died, or like a kid who was hoping
like,
to like, you know what's coming.
Yeah.
And my mom would just look at me weeping in the living room, and they were by Lurleen McDaniel. I'll never forget. And it'd be like the five of them took a hayride. Little did they know that Tony's heart murmur was acting up. They were so sad. And but I would walk around like in grief. Like I was unable to contain myself after a One Last Wish character died. Shout out to Lurleen McDaniel. And I just feel like that, I mean, I felt that way with A Little Life, like the grief I felt at the end, the torture. Like I remember there's a book I read probably 5 years ago called, it's called The Life of Nathaniel P. And I forget, it's not like the Mixed Up Files. It's by Adele Waldman. And it is so beautiful, but it's basically about, we've since learned the term fuckboy. It's about like a New York fuckboy who kind of falls in love with girls and then pushes them to the side and acts like he understands them when he doesn't. And, you know, just all the things.
Everyday things.
All the things that we know that sometimes happen in downtown New York or Brooklyn. And afterwards, like, not to spoil it, but there was a breakup and I was despondent. And also, I think the reason I was so despondent was because it felt so much like something that could have happened to me.
Yeah.
That it ruined me.
Well, yeah, you truly like end up mourning. Like I remember sitting in my 7th grade English class crying about The Fault in Our Stars and to John Green, and just like in tears in front of my whole class.
Of course.
It's and like, I was like, wow, you can feel things from books.
You can, and especially right now, like that was the reason I wanted to start, you know, I've written books before and I'm working on a book doesn't come out in pieces on the internet right now, a memoir, but I thought like, I need to be transported right now. I'm in London. I'm not with any of my family. I'm in a neighborhood I've never lived in before. And it wouldn't even matter if I had, because you can't leave the house. And also like deeply, deeply, obviously concerned for the state of the world and for people that I love and for people that are in much greater danger than than me or my loved ones. And I just felt like I needed to try to do something that took people out of this current moment, even if it was just back to a moment 6 months ago where the biggest problem seemed like shitty romance.
Which, by the way, that's why I was saying before you got on, like, every morning I wake up and I read a chapter. And it's just, even if it's like that 5 minutes of thinking about, oh yeah, I've been on a shitty date like that, or things like that, it's just like some temporary relief from what's going on. And I also think that's a perfect reason to do something. It's like, what would I want right now? That's why I did this book club, is I was like, what would I want to entertain myself with right now? And this was it.
What
and so
makes you
instead
feel
of waiting,
safe?
yeah. And what I wanted to ask, were you writing the TV show before you ever did a book, or were you more writing books and then kind of?
So I wrote my TV. I had always written prose, like, I mean, always, when I was in, high school. So no one wants to read that. My short stories from high school are not anything anybody wants to read. They're all like, I met my neighbor. He was hot. We kissed. Like, they were terrible. But
I would read that.
Thank you so
If
much.
it's
I remember
by you,
one
I'm
of them
reading
was
it.
called like The Boy with the Glass Eye. And I like read it out loud in class and was like, everyone's going to really understand how deep I am now.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So then I started writing this. I went to college for creative writing. I wrote fiction and plays and poetry, and then suddenly realized, oh, I'm obsessed with movies and there are people who write movies. Maybe I'll do that.
Yeah.
And the reason I started directing was really just because I'm a writer and I wanted to figure out how to tell my stories all the way. And then I missed it. And I had sort of, when I was 25, I had, I guess what I describe as a mini nervous breakdown. My show was about to come out. And I just felt really scared. And I was going through some health stuff. And I just found my way back to prose and to writing essays. And that's how I ended up writing my first book. And then after that, I really missed fiction. So I wrote a book of short stories that's going to come out in the next, and then I was going to publish that. And then sort of life, you kind of have to go where your attention is. And I was trying to edit the book of short stories and I was distracted by a lot of personal stuff that was going on, transitions and health things and breakups. And so I thought, I've got to write all this down, and that became a memoir. And so now the memoir has kind of usurped the fiction. So I'm focusing on the memoir to put out early next year, and then we'll finish editing the book of fiction. And hopefully, what it's interesting when you write something and you kind of think you've done everything you need to make the book sort of strong and tight and whole. And then if you step away from it and come back to it, so I'm getting this real luxury, which is that I wrote this fiction and I'm getting to step away from it while I work on this other project and then go back. And right now, this project online, Verified Strangers, has given me, like, Vogue.com has given me this platform to just basically every single morning free write, but with a purpose. And I wanted to feel, especially because we're all in isolation, the reason that I wanted people to vote was because I wanted to feel like it wasn't something I was like I'm writing it, but in a sense we're writing it. And the idea,
because everyone's voting, right, on what happens.
Everyone's voting every Tuesday and Friday on voting. And by the way, the votes, it's not like
easy.
I know, and it's not like I give two possibilities and I know which one it's going to be. Like, at first I tried to guess what people were going to vote, and I'd like kind of start the chapter and they would always surprise me. So, and the other day, like, I had to say, sorry guys, I need an extra day. I was literally stumped. It was too much for me. Like, you guys have,
they're challenging you.
Or the vote today, I literally got it and said aloud to myself, you guys are savages. Like, I was like,
we need the entertainment.
They love the drama. So
we love the drama, especially right now. I'm like, give me drama that isn't real, please, because
it made me so happy. And we did an illustration contest, and
I loved the illustration that was in the chapter today. So beautiful.
Wasn't she amazing?
It was
these
so
people
good.
Turned it out. Like, it wasn't like there was one I thought was perfect. It was like, hers was obviously incredible and it was perfect for Vogue's aesthetic, but there were 20 that could have been the cover of a book. What made me so happy was that everyone kind of saw Allie the same way. And it's always really satisfying when you realize that when you verbally describe somebody, that it's actually resonating for people. Yeah. And so this was this amazing opportunity.
You didn't verbally describe her in such a detailed way. I felt like I could envision her though, but that's the amazing thing, is just based on the experiences she was going through and like the little hints you gave here and there, everyone saw her the same way. which is
Everyone felt the same
incredible.
way. Everyone drew her in overalls. I was so happy. And like I'm learning stuff better every day. And I'm sort of debating. I mean, what's confusing is I have 5 chapters left, and I feel like I've got a lot of storylines to honor. Like she's got a lot of relationships. So I'm trying to figure out.
Who is there? There's Matthew the ex.
There's Matthew, her ex.
There's Hugo,
who disappeared.
We don't know where Hugo went.
We don't know where Hugo went.
There's Dan, who got on my bad side today.
He's a stalker.
I'm not happy with Dan right now.
I experienced him as a stalker, but then I was like, guys, should she tell him, hi, David? My friend David just logged in and said hello.
Hi, David.
But hi, little David.
Thanks for coming, David.
Guys, David's a unicorn. Hot, straight, male, hairstylist. Everybody get on it. Sorry.
I hope David gets something out of this live.
Sorry, go back to your life, dude. But what I was gonna say is that basically, so yes, Dan got on my nerves, but then I said to everyone, can she like basically ignore him, or does she have to listen to what he's saying? And they were all like, no, she has to kind of listen to, and I was like, okay, you guys. So yeah, so Dan, and then there's Timmy,
who I really like right now.
Me too.
I think Timmy might be my favorite.
Timmy's like a hot, cool, gender non-conforming former breakdancer. Like Timmy's the shit. And
I think that there's something so cool, and it is super messy. That's kind of what I love about this story, is it's like super realistic, because I feel like a lot of romance novels, it's like, oh, a single girl and she has no one else in her life and no other commitments, and suddenly a lovely guy comes and like swoops in, and it's just the perfect timing, and like she can drop everything for him, and that's so not how life works.
It's messy, and it's very rare that people get together and it goes smoothly. And that's the other thing I have to wrap up, is her best friend Kaz, who she sort of betrayed in order to do the Timmy thing. So I was sort of thinking, we'll ask if your readers think. I was sort of thinking about, since there's 5 people, Hugo, Dan, Matthew, Timmy, Kaz, and 5 chapters left, dedicating a chapter to
wrapping up each one.
Like I thought in each one I would talk a little about the history of the relationship, and then sort of start on the journey to wrapping it up. And I don't know if that's too tidy, or if it would satisfy people, or if, again, they just want.
I love a good like satisfactory ending, personally.
Me too, unfortunately.
That's, I think, like the sweet torture of reading normal people, is you don't really get that.
Sweet torture is such a good way of putting it.
So that's also why I love that book. But yeah, I think like dedicate. I do like that idea. I think everyone.
Allie Trustman just wrote, Hugo needs to come back.
I was texting Allie today, and she's like, I love Timmy. She's like, Hugo needs to come back. I don't like Dan. I think he's lying. Like, I don't trust him. And I seriously, like, and I feel this too, like I've personally like inserted myself into this story. I feel like I'm living.
Means the world. You don't even know.
I am living this life. Is there something weird or different about, because I feel like when you go in to write a novel, you kind of have an idea of the storyline, right?
Yeah, and I think, I mean, it depends. Some people love to outline, some people don't. And like, I want to make it clear to real writers, you know, like it's an experiment. Allie just wrote in all caps, I hate Dan. I agree. So you know, it's an experiment in live writing. So obviously, if I outlined it and took the time, the prose would have a different feeling. I'm sure there'd be, I'm sure when I go through, if I ever decide to edit it, that there will be a gosh darn, hi Nicolette, that there will be a gosh. I don't know how lives work because I'm so old. So I keep just, anytime I see somebody pop up who I vaguely know, I go, hi.
I think that's how you have to do it, though.
Continue to teach me the way.
I'm trying to like read comments and listen, and like there's
You're
a lot
killing it. I'm the deranged person who's like moving the camera all over and screaming hi at everybody I have a connection to. So and drinking so many beverages. So anyway, there's so many things. Like if I went back and edited this, I'm sure a lot would change, because editing is one of the most beautiful aspects of writing. But because this is so immediate, it also forces me to get out of my head and not criticize myself. And like what I always do if I'm lucky enough, knock on wood, to not have experienced a lot of writer's block. I think writing TV kind of beats it out of you because you have to just do and do and do, and you don't have time to wait.
Yeah.
But the thing that I was going to say is that I feel as though one of the big things for me is that if I have any form of writer's block, the biggest thing I try to do is get myself out of my instincts. So I'll go like, Lena, you're just going to write for 30 minutes and you're going to put on a timer and you're not going to criticize yourself once. And so this whole exercise in a way has been a way to get out of my instincts. And
well, life doesn't happen where you plan it out and then live that through. It's like life happens day by day. So I think there is something that probably adds to how real the story feels, that you are writing it every day and you don't know what's going to happen, and it's kind of like the world is basically telling you what's going to happen, which is how your life is. Most of the time you're not in control. So it's a good exercise, I think, for...
Beautifully said. And again, you know, one of the other things that inspired me is like the way that they published novels in this time in 1850 was that they would put them out serially, and you could like buy it for a penny in a newspaper. They would have, or you know, Vogue used to like publish serial fiction in the 1800s. So that was the way novels were put out, just because the relationship to printing was different. There wasn't a publishing industry in the same way. And Charles Dickens, through the cholera pandemic of 1854, Charles Dickens wrote a novel through that time that was like one of the main distractions. And actually in the novel, he would put like subtle directions to wash your hands or keep your house tidy, like keep that cholera out. And so it felt like that was an interesting model to go back to in this moment, which is so fraught for people. And
yeah, well, we're not getting a lot of new content being made because, you know, thankfully everyone's staying inside right now, but there is that kind of like, it's encouraging me at least to get, you know, I'm less reliant on TV series and the things that, you know, you're reliant on normally in your everyday life. Oh, we paused. I'm learning how to also check Wi-Fi connections, which is a big thing for me. I see a circle around Lena's face. Uh-oh. We lost Lena, but we'll bring her back. Somehow. Oh. I feel like I'm aging myself doing this. I feel like I'm an 80-year-old. My mom knows how to use Instagram Live better than me at this point. Okay. Let's add Lena. Okay. I think we're having technical difficulties, guys. I apologize. We figured it out. Really proud of myself. I missed you so much. I missed you so much when you were gone.
I missed you more than I can say. I literally kept pressing request over. It was so scary because it just said to me, it was just like, did you enjoy being, it was basically like, the computer was basically like, bye, did you enjoy this? Good day.
All of a sudden I was alone and I felt so scared. I was like, where did she go?
I'm never going to let that happen to you again.
Trauma.
So tell me, and also now it's like sort of echoing my old conversation back at me. Do you hear that?
Is it?
It's only on mine. It's the most confusing thing that's ever happened to me, but I'm just rolling with it. So tell me something. You read so much. Are you ever tempted to write?
I am. And as you were explaining that you were doing 30 minutes a day when you're stumped, I've been doing every day since we've been in quarantine. I've just been doing 5 minutes. But
that's amazing.
Of just like my kind of like stream of consciousness writing that's just, I don't stop, I don't pick the pen up once, because I'm super hard on myself, especially when I write, because I read so much. So I'm like, why don't I write like Capote? I don't understand. And then, you know, it's that kind of thing where I'm
Of
like,
course, and if you're a bookworm, what you're taking in is at such a specific level that you just feel like, yeah, of course.
And I only allow myself to be pretentious in like 2 areas of life, but books are one of them. So I'm super hard on myself. It's books and movies. It can't be anything. It can't be anything that I really do, because like it just, so books and directors are the only 2 things that I'm pretentious in.
I think that's great, and that it's.
But by the way, I love you, and that as pretentious as I am with directors, you're up there.
That means everything. And also, I think that pretentious is a word, like, you know, in like 7th grade when people will be like, you're being pretentious. Like, I think it's a word we literally use to like keep women from expressing their taste and
intelligence. Yeah, it's like a level of taste and of standards. And so I think the word pretentious is very funny, and I use it about myself.
As long as pretension doesn't involve like being unkind to other people, which yours doesn't, I say we do it.
I agree.
But that's exactly what you should be doing, writing for 5 minutes a day. Because when I was 19, I went to Naropa College, the Jack Kerouac School of Disembodied Poetics, to study poetry. Oh. And all the like Beat Generation poets do exercises where you like timed writing and just sort of releasing themselves into the material. Yeah. I remember there was an exercise they had us do where we would do fake translations. Like they'd give us a poem from another language we didn't speak, and we would have to translate what we thought it said. Like things.
Wow, that must have been very reflective though, because I feel like if you're having a bad day, you're going in there being like, you know, you're probably interpreting some things very differently. It's super interesting though.
Like if you read like if you just decide what you think a poem in Turkish means, it's gonna mean what it's really gonna end up being your poem. And so those kinds of exercises are, I think, what make a writer.
I think 100%. And so for me, because I'm like, well, if I don't have this like super existential thing I want to write about, and like I don't have it all lined out, then what am I going to write about? And that kind of freaks me out. But I just learned, and I started writing because I'm very bad, as I'm sure most of us are, at expressing my emotions. So I would
it's hard, and having people like you, by the way, who are young and in the public eye saying it's okay to express your emotions. Like we didn't even fucking 15 years ago. Sorry, I just said fuck. That's not me at all. But even 15 years ago when I was a teenager, Naropa and Boulder, Colorado. Someone just asked. I loved it. I love Boulder. But even when I was
Boulder.
Boulder's the best.
I love Boulder.
We live for Boulder.
Yes.
Almost died in a whitewater rafting accident in Boulder. Fell out of my tube, spun, hit my head on a rock, came out smiling. That's how much I love Boulder. My last foray into extreme sports. But what I was going to say is that having people say who are in the public eye, guess what? It's okay to express your emotions is like, it's what, like, I remember another kid seeing me in therapy when I was 15 and I hid behind a trash can. I think I told you that. Yeah. So I was so scared. So, you know, I think that so anyway, you're saying you're not good at expressing your emotions.
No. So I started writing, and then it was weird. Like I would write basically if I felt a certain way about like, and something I wanted to tell my parents or my friends or someone I was dating, whoever, I found it much easier to write it down and then read it a couple of times, so it no longer felt like super personal, like, and then I could go and have that conversation with them. Yeah. Because it almost felt like I was telling them about a book I was reading or something, and it just made it so much easier for me, and it helped me a lot learn how to do that more in like real time.
Still to this day, if I'm in an argument with somebody that I love, I have to write them a letter, because
me too.
I can't organize. If I was here and you and I were in a fight, which we never will be.
Never.
I would be like this. I'd be like, I just kind of feel like, I don't know, I'm sad, and just like run away. But if I write it, I can organize my thoughts and successfully 100%. Communicate.
That's, I think, the importance of reading and writing is it helps. It, first of all, expands your vocabulary so much.
Yeah, which is
Like
always nice.
I did not go to college. I finished high school online. I graduated early. Like I never wanted to feel like I'd enter a room and not be able to carry out a conversation with every person in that room, whatever it
Yep.
was about.
And express yourself clearly. Do you ever think, since you're such a bookworm, that later you'll go to college and just like read all of it? And
Oh my God, yeah, I signed up for, they're doing these really cool, a lot of colleges are doing online courses right now, especially. So I signed up for a Yale course last night.
That's so exciting.
Yeah.
What's the course in?
It's the psychology of happiness, and it's like a psychology course that also teaches you how to practice happiness in your own life. And I was like, that's so cool. They're offering these courses online for I could not go to Yale right now, but that's so awesome. Like it made me so happy. So 100%. And I have no problem being 50 and sitting in a college classroom with a bunch of 19-year-olds.
So cool.
That's kind of my dream. So I 100%.
After Girls ended, I was in such an existential crisis. And I was like, what do I do with my life? I've been doing this since my entire 20s. I don't know who else I am. And so
that was did that feel like almost your version of graduating from college when you graduated from Girls? You were kind of like, well, now what?
Yeah. I mean, I had gone to college, but I hadn't been a very prodigious college student. And Girls was when I started to work hard, take pride in what I did, learn. It was really the first time I made super, super consistently close friends. So yeah, for me, that was totally the experience. And basically I thought to myself, who am I? So I tried to sign up I was like, I'm going to go to grad school for American history. And I had this like entire vision. And it was so delusional. Like I seemed like a character in like a bad comedy film. Like I was like getting ready and then I found out what classes you would have had to take, what tests you would have had to take, and how many hours it was. It was just like, it was like a meme of me being like, just back out of the room.
Yeah.
I was like, maybe my American history graduate degree is not going to happen right now, but
could happen one day though.
Someday. And advanced education and extended education are like Santa Monica Community College, like one of the greatest places to get an extended 100%. Education. And every time I get frustrated, like basically every time someone's rude to me on the internet, I decide I'm going to go switch careers and go back to college. Sometimes I'm like literally at the beginning of this, I sound like one of my own characters, but I was like, how quickly can I become a nurse and help with this crisis? And I looked and it was like 8 years. And I was like, okay, so I'll just support nurses.
You're like, cool. So not going to happen this time.
So not going to happen right now. Happen right now. And that's amazing that you signed up for that. And do you guys will you give me your reading list for the Yale course?
Oh my God, absolutely.
Because I'm so excited. Wrote as a comment, they were like, self-help books are important. And that's another genre like romance that I feel like people dismiss.
I used to dismiss them too because my mom was constantly quoting them. She'd be like, I know it must feel like that way sometimes growing up, and it must, and it just felt like I was like, you're quoting self-help books on like how to be a good parent.
Yes, but totally.
I am the biggest self-help. Like, I just think if you can improve your life in any way
and read at the same time,
like, why not? I don't know. It's just like, it's such an easy way to make changes in your life to be happier. And if you hate it, you hate it.
Just said they're taking the same Yale course, hedonic adaptation.
I'm so happy. Yay. Maybe I should do a book club on my Yale course.
College. Well, here's another question. Do you have a favorite self-help book? And is there one that's changed your life the most? Like for me, this sounds insane, but when I was in college, I read the classic, He's Just Not That Into You. Which sounds like it's just going to be cruel, but basically what it says is you deserve a person who's excited about you, and everybody, it applies to every gender and every sexuality. It's literally just about not deciding to attach yourself to people who don't give you what you deserve.
That is super important.
I was 19. I was obsessed with a guy who barely knew my name. I was like following him around because he'd left his hat in my room one time, and I thought that was like a sign that we were going to be wed.
Is that where the alley hat reference comes from?
Actually, yes.
I love that.
And you found it. The leaving of the hat. You are good, girl.
Thank you.
the leaving of the hat was huge to me. It was like a knit hat, and I thought about it for freaking 6 months. But and I remember he said he said use it and like keep it as a like he basically said like keep it as a cup to put insert disgusting substance in. And I went, okay. But I read he's just not that into you, and I thought, wow, this is actually going to change my life. And it did. And so I wonder if there's a self-help book that you thought might be cheesy and then it ended up really being huge for you.
There's one called The Untethered Soul. That is really good. And it basically just got me out of my own head. And I think it also, like, one of the biggest points it makes is to allow things to pass through you, because if you don't actually feel things and allow them to pass through you, they're just going to stay inside of you. And I was very, very the person to just, like, shut my feelings down. But then everything is just, like, it doesn't go away. It stays there.
Well,
I
do you
love that
ever
one.
feel, because you're now, like, so in the public eye as a young person, that having feelings almost feels dangerous? Like, you just want to keep moving? Or do you feel like that's just who you've always been?
I mean, I've always kind of been the person who's, like, I'll let everyone else be sad. Like, vocally.
You're a caretaker. I know that from the first time I met you. I was like, oh, this is because you came over to my house with Tommy
on my birthday.
It was your birthday.
Can I just say that my experience meeting you was like so magical? Lena literally floated out of bed, you guys. Like, she floated out of bed in this beautiful
shocking
white nightgown, which I'm going to be wearing very soon.
To your home. You've got 2 gifts, lovers discourse and nightgowns.
Oh, the best. And it was my birthday, and you immediately went and found me a gift, which I still have.
I'm so glad. It's from a really amazing vintage place. I went into my vintage jewelry drawer because I was like, this 18-year-old deserves something. But I remember I wasn't feeling well because I just had my ex frozen. What? And you were being so sweet to me, and I was like, oh, we've got a little caretaker on our hands. So I can tell that you are the person who would want to take care of everyone around you.
Yeah. So another one of my favorite self-help books is Codependent No More. I don't know if you've read that.
I do.
Being a caretaker.
Huge. Hello, Melody Beatty. We're grateful for what you do.
We love Melody Beatty. And that one was massive as well.
I have an app on my phone called The Language of Letting Go that gives you a little piece of Codependent No More every day.
I love that. Yeah, she's incredible. And even if you're not technically codependent, just not allowing your happiness to rely on someone else's, I think, is like a huge thing.
And a lot of us are codependent. A lot of us. Like, a lot of us are.
Because I was like, I'm so independent. I'm good. And I was reading that book and I was like, nope. I'm absolutely.
And also, it's really easy to realize that codependence comes in all different forms.
Mm-hmm.
I also love books, like any book that tells me there's going to be like a 10-day happiness experiment. Any book that tells me I'm going to do something for a certain number of days has my heart.
Yeah, or if there's like something at the end of every chapter, like, okay, now try writing down a list of these things. Like, that stuff is fun for me because it feels like I was that annoying kid in school that loved homework.
Something that I think could be huge for you is, my friend Ash says they're codependent AF, but the thing that I was going to say might be huge for you is, do you know the book, it's the classic creativity, The Artist's Way?
I haven't read it.
So The Artist's Way, Changed Jemima's Life, is a book in which an artist, basically this woman whose name is Julia Davis? Julia Davis is someone else, but there's a woman named Julia who wrote this book, and it's basically a series of exercises to unlock your creativity. So it asks you to do a bunch of different things, to sort of like a bunch of different creative exercises, while also talking about the nature of creativity. And I think you would love it because it comes with a workbook, you have assignments, it lasts for a certain amount of time, and everybody says it transforms their life and their relationship to themselves. And because I'm always working so much, it was hard to imagine adding another creative endeavor to my life.
And you are I feel like you're a very creative person.
Well, thank you. But one of the things about quarantine, I feel, is that a lot of people are discovering more time in their life. They're not, obviously, it's hard to say silver lining because of all the pain and devastation, but a lot of people are finding like pockets of time in which to start
yeah.
thinking about things differently.
And it's just the things that everyday life can get in the way of. Like, I feel like a lot of the time we don't have the chance to ask ourselves if we are actually happy doing what we're doing
Not
because
at
we're in
all.
such a routine. And suddenly, when that routine gets taken away from you, you have to reflect. And I think that is if one of the positive things that could come out of this is a lot of us can realize, like, oh, what changes can I make in my everyday life that I didn't even have time to think about making before.
Yes. Oh, someone commented, it's The Artist Way by Julia Cameron. I bet there's some Artist Way lovers out here because it's a popular one.
I'm going to get it on my Kindle
someone
today.
actually just said their counselor recommended it. It's like popular in every country, but it's an artist's self-help book, which I love.
Wow. Okay, wait, I pulled quotes. Don't make fun of me. I pulled quotes
yes,
from Verified
so
Strangers
excited.
and I want to talk to you about them. Okay.
Wait, I'm here and thrilled.
This was just my favorite one because I felt like it was very me and very you. And I think a lot of women especially will relate to this, but it said, if there were two doors, one marked yes and one marked no, she would find a way to convince herself that the no door was the sensible one. That hit super close to home.
I'm so glad that you feel that. Hi, Nikki. Nikki Reed is watching. We love her, but I'm so glad that you feel that because it is, I feel like I've always been that person who thinks that, who can give anyone else advice. And then when it's comes time for me, I go,
forget it.
No matter how much experience I've had, I'm just like, whoop, whoop, okay, I'm headed there. And it's just like, I'm about to be 34. So I'm double your age. No, not quite, but.
Not quite.
But, and
mentally, I'm a 75-year-old man. I've said this multiple times.
See,
so it probably evens out to us. The average is probably about the same for us.
I feel you're more mature than me. And by the way, some of my dearest friends are that much older than me. But it's still, I have a lot of really close friends who live in the 16 years older than me space. But I do think that it's really like, it takes time to start to trust your instincts or to start to trust your experience. So I'm so glad you connected to that.
I love that one. I have another one. This one was really sad to me. And it's when Allie's referring to her relationship with Matthew and she's like, while also forgetting that they were happy once, that was the cruelest offense. Like, are you kidding?
I can't believe you noticed that. Yeah, that's...
Because that's to me, that's the saddest thing is when every, like, beautiful part of a relationship can be tarnished by the way it ends or after the fact. And it's like, it feels like you're taking away so much of the love that you put into it. And I read that and I got so emotional. And I just imagined you writing
so much to me.
And you're like casually throwing in these really beautifully sad and important quotes throughout this novel. And that's what I think
so nice. Well, I think something that's really nice for me is that it's helping me to express some of that. You know, I remember it was really easy. I wrote in my new memoir this chapter about how when I first got out of my long-term relationship, it was really, I could only think of him as a bad guy, even though he's absolutely not, because...
Well, it makes it easier to justify it.
You don't want to, if you remember how fantastic someone was and how fantastic your connection is, it's really, really hard in order
to move on
and to also understand why aren't we doing it anymore. So I don't mean doing it, I mean doing it. So
all of it.
So thank you.
Why aren't we doing any of it?
Like having you read it so closely is so, like, it makes it all worth it.
No, and I think like just the way that you write it and the format that you put it in. I've never read a book that was coming out like so, like I'm going on Vogue and it's like 1 hour ago it was posted. That's the coolest thing ever. And like good on you for keeping up with it because I think motivating ourselves is hard right now. So you've inspired
so much.
I'm so happy that we got to
By the way, someone said you need a podcast and I agree.
A podcast?
Yeah.
Do you have a podcast? Why don't you have a podcast?
Like, yes, he does. I need to.
Should we have a podcast? Honestly, I love I've been so into podcasts lately. I was never into them, and now I think quarantine has like sent me into podcasts.
Yeah.
Do you have any good ones? Do you have any recommendations?
So many. My favorite podcast is called Who Weekly.
Okay.
It's gossipy and heavenly. But I also listen to a ton of true crime podcasts.
Oh, I loved Serial. Did you listen to Serial?
Like a Serial true crime podcast.
Oh,
I love How to Fail. It's a beautiful podcast with that kind of just talks to people about their experiences of failure with this woman, Elizabeth Day. I love Patrick Sandberg's podcast. He's just a hilarious, sharp-witted, acidic New York City boy. And then and then there's a new podcast that's incredible. That's